Hey, everybody, and welcome to the For Female Founders podcast series, where we're helping women in business learn to thrive, not just survive. I am your host, Sarah Bundy, and today my guest is Janiina Lammi. Janiina is a startup founder turned investor and is a venture partner at BSV Ventures, an early stage deep tech, life science, and dual use VC in Northern Europe. She is also a senior advisor for strategic initiatives at Helsinki Partners. With a background in strategic marketing and communications, her career spans roles from founder and CMO to investment director at then Dep Capital across both startups and listed companies. Outside of work, she's an avid mountaineer and published author. Janiina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
I love having you here, and it's wonderful to meet women who are in the VC world. Please tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get into being an investor from being a founder and arrive at the stage that you're in today? With Awin's marketing technology platform, you can easily discover the best partners who connect you with huge audiences of new customers. Understand how your partnerships are performing with intuitive reporting and only pay for the results you need. Start today and grow your own way with Awin.
That's a long story. Typically, people, describe this beautiful strategic career path. However, I've always followed things that interest me. And one could, find these, red lines in the story. However, mine was more about following what's interesting. But me in a nutshell. So 20 years in marketing, 15 years of entrepreneurship. Started in a advertising agency world, jumped into startups, then to corporate, and then back to startup, this time to the dark side of the table, if you may. So I have experience on the marketing and communications, from the design and the leadership. So sort of the both sides of the table. How did I become a VC? Back in 2019, my startup had 2018. My startup had failed, and I briefly went to the corporate world, thinking that this was the thing that I hadn't been doing yet. Soon to realize that I really missed the dynamic world of startups. It's something that you probably born for. At the time, one of the VCs that I had pitched my startup to, then Dep Capital, was looking for someone to run their marketing operations and build a platform, which is a weird word for a value-add services for the portfolio founders. We're going to come back to that later, I suppose. But I thought, I used to be a B2B SaaS founder myself, and I'm a marketer, so this is a perfect fit. So luckily the guys agreed. And actually later on, I used to joke that, I didn't get funded by Dep Capital, but they did give me a job eventually. Worked there for a few years, first on the marketing and platform side of things. But right from the beginning, I was very interested in investing in startups, and I started supporting the investment team. So I was sort of screening the deals, helping the portfolio founders with their go-to-market strategies and so forth. And after the while, the general partners came to me and said that you seem to be interested in the sort of the investing side of things. And that's how it started. I jumped into the investment team, sort of a very, very deep end of the pool, and started learning the investing in startups. That lasted for a couple of years. Then I'm pretty purpose-driven person. So I started feeling that, I'm trying to avoid cliches. However, I have a daughter, and I was thinking that I want to, create a better world for her. And I realized that I'm in the right industry, but I wanted to, do something really tangible for a better world. And I had been working with BSV Ventures for quite some time, actually, mentoring their founders and attending their programs as one of the coaches and so forth. And then I realized that, we actually had a conversation about this. And then the Sandro, one of the GPs, called me a couple of weeks later that you should join our team. So I did. And that's how I got into VC and ended up into another deep pool, or deep end of the pool, now learning to invest in deep tech, which is awesome. I mean, we're building the future technologies, we're building medtech and all the interesting stuff that's gonna, make humanity and society safe and thrive in the future as well. And also working with Helsinki partners, where we bring international investors to New Nordics region to really explore and discover the opportunities that lie here.
A great big thank you to our sponsors, PartnerStack. PartnerStack's ecosystem connects you to the world's largest B2B network for you to earn, connect, and grow. It sounds so amazing. And we're going to talk a little bit about what VCs are, because for those of us who are newer to the venture capital world, we need a little bit of VC 101. But before we actually go there, can you tell us a little bit more about just what deep tech is? Because we hear a lot about this, but very high level in a nutshell, what is deep tech?
So that's actually a really great question. So I'm gonna explain what deep tech is for us at BSV Ventures, because it's a kind of a vague high level description of multiple things. However, what we see that it's something that is based on, for us at BSV, it's something that is based on scientific discovery or something that actually is creating something new and innovative. So we're talking about these scientific teams who make these beautiful inventions or discoveries, and then they start exploring how to bring them to the markets where typically the market doesn't exist, or the discovery is actually something that is going to transform the entire way we do things. That's a great description, and actually an amazing and very exciting vertical and market to be in. So I imagine you being able to see first access to some of the inventions that humans are coming up with today is an exciting place to be. Yeah, and actually, for coming from the academia, typically it's a long journey for these inventions, and many of those never see the sort of the markets, and we never see them. And what we as deep tech investors try to do is find the ones that are with most potential and bring them to use of us in our everyday lives. I love that. Well, let's talk a little bit about what VCs do, because, a lot of people they talk about, I'm working with a VC, or I got funding with a VC. For those of us who are a little newer to the world of venture capital, can you break it down for us? What is it exactly that VCs do, and why would founders choose to work with them? Yeah, okay. So VCs, which come from venture capitalists, we invest in early stage companies with high growth potential, and we do this in exchange for equity. So we do not only provide funding, but also strategic guidance, industry connections, credibility, and so forth. But one good thing to know about VCs is that VC it's kind of like a startup as well. So we raise money. We are not playing with our own money. We raise funding from our own investors, and we promise them high returns. With this money, we create funds, and this fund is then deployed into startups aiming for these high returns, and typically few of these startups are able to return the fund. Why do the founders choose VCs? They typically need capital, significant amount of capital, to scale faster than the traditional bootstrapping would allow. A strong VC can help them a lot. But of course, we see hundreds and thousands of companies every year. So we do have experience and understanding of how the game works, or at least that's what we want to think. We help the founders on the areas of business development, strategies, recruitment, go to market, and of course, raising the next funding round. That's actually a very important thing to understand about the VCs, because we come with, strings attached. We expect high growth. We expect eventually you to exit. We expect you to actually give away a little bit of your power, because we get the equity. So it's a partnership. It's like And it's good to consider it as just like you consider marriage. Typically, a relationship with the VC lasts like 7 to 10 years, so longer than marriage on average. So you do need to consider, first of all, if VC money is the right source for funding for you, and then finding the really good VC for your business.
I gotcha. Very interesting. And you also mentioned giving up a piece of equity. If you're going to work with a venture capital company, you need to be prepared to have a long-term partnership with this group and give up some control. Is there a certain percentage of equity that companies typically need to give up in order for a VC to be interested in working with them?
It depends. I mean, it's you have certain thumb rules per funding rounds. You have certain thumb rules per verticals and so forth. But I wouldn't say that there are, any specific numbers that I could give that this is the ballpark. I think it's always a matter of on your own industry, your own stage, and so forth.
Okay, so lots of variables in play. And you also mentioned talking about raising funds, right? We hear a lot about raising seed funding and Series A and Series B and different investment rounds. Can you tell us what all of those actually mean and how do funders use them to grow their businesses?
Yeah, so different funding rounds are for different stages of the company. Typically, we call the first funding round, which might not be the official funding round. We call it FFF, friends, fools, and family. So that's typically the first source of money that the founders get when you want to start building a business. You might still have your day job, or you need some funding to jump out of your day job and start focusing on your company. So it's super early. You still don't have much, but you have these people around you who trust you and who believe in your vision. But I would say then the first then there could be an angel round in between, but let's bundle the angel round together with the pre-seed round, which is typically sort of the earliest stage where the professional investors come in. They can be, angels or early VCs such as BSV and so forth. So that round is for validating your business concept, your early hires, business development, and so forth. So you're already building and creating your business setup and getting ready to move forward. Then it's time for seed funding, which is for developing your product, validating the market, and further building your team. Series A round, it's the first of the alphabets, which comes next. It's usually scaling the business model and growing revenue. So there you already know that you do have some sort of product market fit and you're ready to scale. And then comes the later round, Series B, Series C, and so forth. They are more for bigger funds, for expansion, new markets, and so forth. So each round sort of help founders to reach the next milestone towards the profitability and eventually an exit.
That makes sense. Okay, so if we're talking about seed funding, typically we're in such a beginning stage that we're just even trying to do proof of concept. Whereas if we're in Series A, we're typically trying to get money to take that proof of concept that's now been proven and taken it to a bit of a first growth stage. Is that correct?
Yeah, and also one thing to understand is that, for example, from this Nordic perspective, the funding rounds in the US market seem very different in terms of numbers, sizes, and what's required for the market. So actually in the US, typically the money we're talking about is larger. However, we are more about first proving the concept, and I'm not sure if this is entirely true anymore, but at least it used to be said that in the US you could actually raise quite a bit of funding with a very good storytelling, whereas here we have this tendency actually skipping the storytelling, and our engineer go into their workshops and they build products and they hone and they actually don't ever bring them to market until they're pretty advanced with the product. And probably the optimal solution is somewhere in between, combining the storytelling and really testing the product to on the market and with your early users.
That's great. I appreciate that perspective and the difference, and just even the way that people think about when to go to market or when to pitch or when to bring in a VC and which people might even be involved. So that's super helpful. Thank you so much. Let's talk a little bit about how VCs add value beyond money. Some people are under the impression that when you work with a venture capital fund, you get some money and then it's almost like a loan. That's a very different structure because there's a lot more involved in working with a venture capital partner. So can you tell us a little bit more about what venture capital firms do to help founders succeed just beyond writing a check? And what does each side get from a strong founder and investor relationship?
Yeah, of course. Again, this depends a lot on your size, on your company stage, and the VC and so forth. But generally speaking, one could say that VCs bring the expertise, the network, and strategic guidance. As said, we see a lot of companies, we see a lot of stories, and hopefully we're able to build some experience on understanding how to avoid some of the pitfalls and maybe make better choices. It doesn't mean that we might be always right, but you do need to, or I suggest that you listen to your VC. Never take anything as a one single source of truth. At the end of the day, with VCs, the founders drive the car. But we do bring some experience and maybe it's worth listening and taking into consideration. So the founders, what you gain when you get a VC on board is sort of faster growth, hopefully better decisions, and VCs benefit, helping these founders with stronger returns and long-term relationships. And one thing to consider and understand about VCs is that typically same founders who are successful, they tend to be serial founders. So for example, at my previous job at Lendep Capital, we had several founders who had been invested before. And once they get their new business idea, because the founders who are really good founders, they tend to have it in their blood. So it's not about money, it's about building these beautiful companies, so they keep coming back. And it's very important to nurture these relationships and build this trust and collaboration between a VC and the founder. But then again, there are different types of VCs. Some are more hands-on than the others. So remember to sort of figure out what type of a VC is the right type of an investor for you, and ask in the early discussions, what's your approach? Do you have this VC platform, which means the value-added services? Where do you focus with your VC platform? Because some have, a lot of talent with business development, others, for example, in IP strategies and so forth. They tend to have certain focuses. Larger VCs have entire teams to help with the different angles of business building. So
that's super interesting, and I appreciate again the insight into what we need to be considering as we're working through these things. Let's talk a little bit about the gender gap in venture capital. We know that there's about 2% of funding that goes to female founders, yet women make up about 25% of founders in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. When you break those numbers down, what do they actually mean to you? And what opportunities do you think are missing as an industry?
Generally speaking, it means that, huge pool of talent and innovation is being overlooked. However, I do think that, it's always dangerous to take one or two numbers out of the context. The figure is, the number 2% is true, like is the 25% as well. So that's the reality in the market, unfortunately. But it's not the same everywhere, and all the verticals. For example, let's take BSV's home market, Lithuania, and let's say life science as an example. So over half of the Lithuanian scientists, they're women. they're female. Women establish less businesses than men. That's also I think it's pretty much the same everywhere. I think it's somewhere around 25%. So if 2% of this 25% actually get funded, it's a larger number than, or percentage than the male founders. So it's always good to look at different angles to these numbers. However, that's just one sort of numbers game. But if I look at BSV and our investments, we about 4 weeks ago, before I started my holiday, so these numbers might be a bit old. However, I think they still give a good example or description of the situation. Is that we had 20 investments in seed level, closed or in closing. Of those, we had 8 female founders.
Wow.
Of them, 7 were CEOs. And those were life science numbers. So life science has higher rate of female founders, and we didn't invest, in life sciences, or if we didn't invest in life sciences, we would only have 1 female founder and 0 female CEOs. But we don't have a quota. We don't actually care about the gender. Based on our strategy for investing, we invest in opportunity and great business cases. But it, the numbers change in different areas and in different verticals. That's good to keep in mind. I'm not saying that the numbers aren't true. They are, unfortunately, but it's always sort of good to look at these figures from different angles.
I actually find it really interesting that in your case, you're looking at about 35 to 40% of the companies that you've invested in that particular portfolio are female run and founded, CEOs as well, which is amazing. And I also wonder if it's different in different markets, if you look at it from a global perspective. So maybe there are some countries that are a little more progressive. Maybe there are some countries that have a certain talent or vertical expertise that's a little more prominent by gender. And so therefore, if you have founders in those areas, it's a higher ratio or a higher percentage of female founded and invested companies. So that'd be interesting to look at from a stats perspective. I'm actually going to take that one away and do some more research on it. Interesting. But thank you for that example. I appreciate it. As we're talking about international markets, obviously you're very deep in the Finnish and the Northern European startup ecosystem. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about what international founders and investors should know about the opportunities in your side of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that, Finland and Northern Europe offer world-class talent. I mean, in Finland, the education is free, which can be seen in the number of PhDs we generate, and the academia is very advanced. We have, strong tech expertise and collaborative ecosystem with access to both EU and global markets. So this region is known for innovation in, for example, gaming, deep tech, sustainability, health, and it's really backed by the solid public support and early adoption for new technologies. So maybe that's in a nutshell the Nordic market.
Do you know, okay, this might be a little cheeky question. Can anybody go to post-secondary for free in Finland? Or is it exclusive to citizens of Finland?
Actually, I don't know if you move to Finland, let's leave that out. I don't actually have an exact right answer for you. Yeah, let's cut it out. However, I do think it's possible. If you move here, your child is allowed to go to the school system. So that's quite often people move to Finland when their kids reach certain age, and we're just discussing this with some of fellow investors who say that, for example, during the times of Nokia, a lot of people moved here to work here, and now Nokia the situation has changed quite quite a bit, but people stayed because, they were so happy they wanted to raise their families here and so forth. So this is a good place to live.
Well, we've heard so many stats on this side of the world about Scandinavia in general and the Nordics and the quality of life and the leadership and the work-life balance and the respect for families and the quality of education. So whatever you guys are doing over there, keep up the good work. It's good stuff. Let's talk about what advice you would have for female founders that are preparing to pitch for the very first time. They're thinking about going to investors, they want to present. What advice do you have for female founders looking to go get some funding right now?
First of all, forget about the gender discussion. Forget about it. Focus on presenting a, very strong business case. Do your homework beforehand. Is VC the right money source for your strategy? If so, which VC is a fit? So it's your job to figure out if the VCs are fit, because then you end up wasting your time and theirs if you keep, hunting down the sort of the wrong VCs. Find and contact only the relevant VCs, because, for example, back in my founder days, I remember spending a lot of time with this VC fund from Central Europe. Our company was super early, but I had been discussing he was an associate of some level. I had been discussing with him for several hours, and he kept asking further questions and giving me homework, and I was working like crazy to, convince the guy. And then we thought that if we only were there and met them face to face, this was before COVID, so face to face, and I think face to face is still important, but back in that day, it was even more important in building trust. So we figured that if we flew to Paris, where this VC was based, we can, make sure that we secure the funding. So we did, and sent the guy an email saying, we just happened to be in Paris and spent the last money to fly there. Later on, I realized that this VC was a later stage VC, and this associate had been given a task to do certain market study. And he was happy to give his homework to me. So I'm not saying that VCs do this or it's a way of working here, but then again, don't waste your time on investors who are not relevant to you. And always be honest. This is probably, you asked for one advice and now I keep talking, but these things keep popping out of my head. But especially about the problems. As I said, we see a lot of companies. We know that it's so difficult to build a startup. So you're going to have problems. It's not easy. We know that. And the trust and the open communication is built from the first moment. So don't lie to your VC ever, ever, ever.
Or anybody, frankly. It's better to just do business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Love it. Good advice. Thank you so much. What is your vision for the future through the work that you're doing as a VC, as an investor? Do you have a vision for supporting this global innovation ecosystem? What does it look like to you?
I think it goes back to the purpose that I mentioned in the beginning and me wanting to, build something for the future. I hope we can focus on building strong and sustainable businesses. I hope we can, grow international collaboration and cross-border investing, as it does create the best opportunities for great entrepreneurs and companies to, succeed regardless what's their home market. And of course, as a mountaineer, I constantly witness the damage that we are doing to our nature. And I hope that through this work, we can really build a better future and really sustainable world for our kids. I hope that didn't sound too cheesy.
No, I loved every second of it. I paused at the end. Perfect. It was great. I love it so much. So thank you, Janiina. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your expertise and your advice to us. If anybody wants to contact you at the end of this show, what's the best way to reach out?
You can find me through LinkedIn. Just that's the easiest way.
All right. So anyone listening, it's Janiina Lammi, last name Lammi. Janiina was Janiini. So lovely to see you, my friend, and thank you so much again, and we will see you guys on the next show. Thanks for listening to the 4 Female Founders podcast series. If you enjoyed this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe, like, or comment below so we can continue to support women in business by helping them thrive, not just survive. We'll see you on the next show.